You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. If you trade options, you want to be smart about every decision. So why not choose the smartest platform for your trades? At Public.com, you can view upcoming earnings dates directly in the options chain. You can queue and execute multiple orders simultaneously. Easily view contract performance over time. And if you have a question about any stock, you can ask Alpha, their AI for investors. But want to know the smartest part of trading options on Public? Earning rebates on every single contract traded. No other platform provides options trading rebates, and they reduce your trading costs to less than $0 per trade. So, make the smart move and switch. The only options trading platform where you can earn rebates on every single contract traded. To learn more, please visit public.com/optionblock. Paid for by Public Investing. Options not suitable for all investors and carry significant risk. Full disclosures in podcast description. U.S. members only. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
That music means we are back. It is Monday. It is time to commence our broadcast week here on the network. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope everything is rolling your way here into the end of the year, having a good start to your holiday season. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. Remind you of a couple of things right here as we kick off the show. First off, if you're not listening to the full network, what are you doing? B, if you want to go above and beyond, check out the Pro podcast feed. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. And we're just coming out of the heels of our thankful season. If you want to be thankful for someone, be thankful for the folks who keep all this content flowing to you throughout the network. Support the folks who support our shows, like our friends over there at Public. Public.com/optionblock is the URL to go to. That's literally all you got to do. And that lets them know you're coming from the old network. And it keeps these shows you've been listening to for, man, in January it'll be 18 years, for nigh on 18 years coming to you for, I don't know if I got another 18 years in me, I'm talking, maybe, who knows, maybe I do, but for a while to come here. Public.com/optionblock to kick the tires and light the fires as we kick the tires on who's joining us on the old program today. First, we go out to the hinterlands of Chicago, where we are joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike Tosaw. Unfortunately, we are not joined on the Monday episode by our good pal, the Rock Lobster. He's got some family medical issues he needs to see to, so our thoughts are with him over there and his family as they're taking care of all of that. But you know what, listeners? The show must go on, and Uncle Mike needs to prepare himself for a little bit of 80s trivia. We're going audio daily double style again. Can you name this? Well, I'll set it up once we get there. All right, here we go. This is the musical version. I couldn't play the version with the actual words because they say the name of the show way too many times. But this was one of these seminal cartoons of the 80s. There was kind of a trifecta, a top three, if you will. And this was definitely one of the big three, a brand that is still very much going in the year of our Lord 2024, but born really as we know it in the 80s. With this seminal cartoon show, became a movie, and then went on to do many other things, has become real-life live-action movies. Oh, you can only hear the music. Well, okay, that's good. The music is what we want you to hear anyway. You do? Okay. Uncle Mike is ready to buzz in. Uncle Mike, what seminal 80s cartoon theme is this, sir?
Okay, buzz. I want to buzz in. I know that one.
All right, go for it, sir.
G.I. Joe,
yes.
A real American hero. G.I. Joe is there.
A real American hero.
G.I. Joe against Cobra, the enemy.
Yes. I think we both know, even if the Rock Lobster was here, he probably would not have hit on that one, sir. But yes, a real American hero, a.k.a. G.I. Joe, a.k.a. I would definitely say one of the top three kind of seminal 80s properties / cartoons. You know, you had G.I. Joe, obviously you had Transformers, and probably maybe throw in like a He-Man, some other things like that. But G.I. Joe definitely up there, still going today. In fact, at the end of one of the most recent terrible Transformers movies, they teased G.I. Joe in that. So G.I. Joe still very much alive in movie theaters in 2024. Uncle Mike, do you have any enduring memories of the seminal show that was G.I. Joe, the real American hero, sir?
I liked just those were the three things that I would look forward to from coming home from school, would be to watch G.I. Joe, Transformers, and He-Man. Many memories. I had that tank they called the Mauler. I still remember getting it at Christmas. I still remember the picture my mom took of me holding the tank up for the picture of me getting the Mauler for Christmas when I was in grade school. I had a lot of the action figures of G.I. Joe. I like Transformers better, and He-Man was definitely my all-time favorite, but definitely a big fan of G.I. Joe. Loved the Mauler. And a lot of good memories with it. Watching the cartoons and then just playing with all my friends with the G.I. Joe action figures.
Good memories indeed. Let's see if we can make some new good memories, listeners, as we head right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what is trading. I think we all know, listeners, if the Rock Lobster was here, he would not have known the instrumental version of the theme song to A Real American Hero. Yes, I kind of agree with your pantheon there of the 80s, Mr. Uncle Mike. Definitely He-Man, Masters of the Universe, top of the pyramid, top of the food chain for me. Then Transformers right below it, probably. And then G.I. Joe is probably a distant one. The dudes were just too small. The figures that 3 3/4 inch size, whatever they were just too small. He-Man was bigger and beefier. Transformers, I needed something big and beefy to capture my attention as a young child. And those little 3 3/4 inch figures weren't doing it. But like the vehicles, as you said, the play sets, all the other the world building they had going on with G.I. Joe was second to none. And I think I've seen pictures. I never had it. I wasn't a G.I. Joe kid, but the people who had that aircraft carrier, did you have the aircraft carrier? What was it, the flag? The thing was like 6 feet long. It was the size of a room. Did you have that, Uncle Mike?
No, like I say, G.I. Joe is definitely third place with me as well, but did not have the aircraft carrier. But I never got it, but in hindsight, I wish I would have. But not many people know this, but William Perry was actually a G.I. Joe action figure.
Yes. That's what made G.I. Joe cool. They had real-life people in it, like, of course, friend of the network, person who follows the network, Sergeant Slaughter. That's one of our claims to fame on this network, on this show, Uncle Mike. We've gotten Sergeant Slaughter to play along with us now, which is awesome. But also,
that
you're right,
awesome.
the fridge. How awesome is that? The fridge was like a mailway figure, so I never had that. But yes, I think he's due for a remake, I think, and I would definitely get. I do have the modern Sarge. I think I gave that out as a present one year. I think that's the year Sebastian won the trivia contest. He won the modern reincarnation of the Sarge action figure, which I have right here in my studio looking at me right now with his little baby Sarge figure in his hand. But yes, a fridge would be nice. Look it up if you haven't listened. Just look up the USS Flag for G.I. Joe to see this monstrosity of a thing. I got a kid that's 3 times as big as the kid. It's the size of a room. I don't know what kid could have housed that in their house as a child, but yeah, it's an impressive piece of play-settery, if I do say so myself. Are these markets impressive today? Well, I guess it depends your definition of impressive, listeners. I don't think I would term them as impressive, but far be it from me to judge how you see these markets, listeners. Right now, we're seeing mostly green to kick off the week. S&P off nearly 0.5%, about 0.45%. NASDAQ off, exact same amount, 0.45%. And the Dow off about 0.25%. Our old pal small caps up slightly, not even 0.05%. So kind of a rounding error to the upside on the small caps today. And our old pal VIX cash getting a little bit firmer, a little bit frothier today. 13 3/4, up about 0.25 point. Of course, some interesting news over the weekend on the geopolitical front, which we all know hasn't really impacted the markets too much, but kind of maybe a little bit interesting and or concerning. Just the fact that, Syria being toppled so quickly. Obviously a good thing whenever a dictator, a tyrant is kicked to the curb, but obviously uncertainty, never a good thing out there. So people are kind of looking askance at that. Perhaps, obviously, we still have some earnings on the docket, Salesforce and a few others popping off this week. And of course, we have some more key numbers to keep an eye on, and the Fed looming in the not that distant future as well. So things people are still keeping an eye on as we're heading into the tail end of the year. So VIX, usually this is the year where the time of year really where VIX goes to die, but VIX not going away without a fight today. 13 3/4 to kick off the show. Vol also getting a little bit firmer, a little bit juicier at about a 92, up about 5 points from where it was this time on the Thursday show. All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, not exactly a world beater day, certainly not an Uncle Mike type of day. What is catching your eye out there today, sir?
Well, I guess this is not a day that you would say, yo, Joe. You would say Cobra.
It'd definitely be a Cobra day, yes.
It's definitely a Cobra day. For those of our audience that didn't watch G.I. Joe cartoons in the 80s, they have no idea what we're actually talking about at all.
By the way, design-wise, of the two, I definitely gravitated much more towards Cobra. They just look cooler. The bad guys always look cooler. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you on that one. Because who was the Cobra guy? Destro, I think.
Yeah, the metal mask. Yeah, he looked awesome. The good guys had nobody like that.
Yeah, Destro, I think that's what his name was. He just looked evil. He was kind of creepy looking, but yeah. So, but yeah, the other thing that my older brother would do to tease me when I was really young is that he would always watch He-Man with me and say, "Now, see, Skeletor is really the good guy. He-Man's really the bad guy," and he would like manipulate the whole plot of the show and about put me in tears. So that explains why I have to spend so much money on therapy these days. But I digress. In terms of the marketplace, we do have the markets down just under 0.5% in the S&P 500. VIX is up about 8% on the day. Bonds are down slightly on the day. But the thing that's catching my eye on the macro level is we are getting a little bit of a rally in the shiny stuff. Gold is up a little over 1% on the day, and then silver is up over 3% on the day. It was up almost 4% at one point, but now it's only up 3%, so it's pulled back a little bit. But we do have some movement in the shiny stuff and the precious metals, so we'll see if that can get back up to its glory with which it had a few weeks back, which was still about $2 higher in silver. So we're not the highs, but we are definitely making some headway back towards them. In terms of some individual names, some things with which I'm seeing that we just generally look at, some market indicators. These are some of our holdings in our triple income covered call portfolio. Taiwan Semiconductor down roughly 1% on the day. Apple, on the other hand, is up 1.5% on the day. So we do have that. ADBE, that's a stock that took to some bad news with its earnings a couple weeks ago, but it's still kind of holding its own in the upper 170s, but is kind of clawing its way back, kind of, sort of, maybe a little bit, if you will. Some other names with which we're looking at, these are not in our covered call portfolio, but some other things that just to kind of keep an eye on, just to see how things are going in the overall market. Disney's down 2% on the day, down at 114. It has rallied quite a bit lately since their earnings, but it is down a little bit today, taking a little bit of a breather. Facebook, Meta, the stock formerly known as Facebook, down $13 on the day to 610. Some other names of note, Netflix is down $23, down 2.5% on the day. Tesla's having a boring day today, down only 1%. So a lot of what we actually have going down makes this look a lot worse than it is, but we do have some stocks that are not going down. Amazon, for example, that's up almost 1% on the day. Cover your ears, Mark. Ford is up about roughly 1% on the day. So
not possible, sir. You must have your wrong quote data. I'm sorry.
I think so. So then Google's up just under up 0.8% on the day. So a lot going down and a lot going up. So it's not like we have a broad-based sell-off, even though it's not really much of a sell-off. I would just say that there's stuff's going down, stuff's going up, but more stuff's going down. And that's why we have our down 0.4% day that we have at this point.
Let's dig into that day a little bit more, shall we, listeners? See what's lighting up our tape out there. Is it a banger day across the spectrum of the options world? The answer is it's dare I say it, respectable. Let's start off in VIX land. Now, VIX, a few months ago, this number wouldn't have been that wild, that crazy. 563,000 contracts on the tape, back in the dog days of summer, which is still weird to say when we were averaging well over 1 million contracts a day, or close to it. 563 was kind of what you expected this time of the show, if not slow. These days, with the ADBE down to a seasonally appropriate 771 in VIX land, 563 is a lot more of a banger, including in that, listeners, 100,000 exactly of the June 42 halves. Going up today. Those are opening. We also have 25,000 of the Jan 42 halves, so maybe we have a bit of rolling action out there. Let's see. Now we got the June 21 42 half, 1x4. And looks like they're rolling. Yeah, they're taking off the Jan, looks like. So the Jan looks like probably same strikes. 42 halves, definitely. I'll have to go see what the other side of that strike is. It's lower on my totem pole here, but they're definitely opening on the June 1x4. So they're doing 25,000 of the 21s in June for 248, listeners, against 4 of the 42 halves for 86 cents. So obviously, looks like they're selling, obviously, and buying 4. So they're doing it for a debit, not a credit. But interesting stuff out here. Again, that structure has been very prominent for a while. It's kind of wide, so obviously if we don't get the moonshot, you're going to kind of be wearing it a little bit. But we also know it doesn't take a lot of a move to make those 42 halves pop, in which case 4 of them should pay for whatever you're getting hurt on the 21 side. But it's an interesting one. We've talked about these ratios to the upside in VIX land for a while. In fact, I'm doing one right now in UVIX. I talked about that on Oddities and a little bit on this show last week. Is this a strategy you like to the upside in some of these vol products, listeners? I'm curious. Hit us up, let us know. But outside of that roll really doesn't look like there's a heck of a lot else really going up out there today. I mean, this one spread is at least 150,000 contracts, if not more. Looking for the other side of the Jan. I don't see it. So they're just taking off the 42 halves. That would be strange, but we've seen stranger things. Speaking of strange, is SPY strange today? No, I'd say SPY is pretty much exactly in line with where we expect it to be this time of the show. We expect it to be about 4.35. It is 4.32, listeners. So pretty much right in that ballpark. The ADBE, 7.17 million contracts out there. The S, same deal. Right about where we expect it to be. We expect it to be about 1 3/4. It is 1.83 million right now. So pretty much in line with expectations out there. The ADBE, 3.06 million. Small caps looking spicy today. 1.11 million contracts on the tape against an ADBE of about 1.5 million. So small caps lighten it up out there, even though from an underlying perspective, it's kind of the most quiet of the major indices out there. So kind of interesting. What's lighting it up out here in small caps today? It looks like it's a Jan put vertical for size. 112,000 of the Jan 229, 227 put spreads going up today. Right now, IWM is at 239. So $10 out of the money put spread. Opening on both legs. So this is not a roll or anything like that. This is a straight up opening put spread, listeners. 10 handles out of the money. I don't know, listeners, are you a fan of that? 112,000 times. Somebody was not playing around. Looks like they did it, listeners, for 40 cents. Bought the 229 puts for 235. Sold the 227 puts for $1.95. So again, $2 put spread for 40 cents. Not the wildest thing we've seen out here, but certainly could make. It's pretty tight. I mean, if you're gonna buy those puts, I don't know. Uncle Mike, does that float your boat? A $10 out of the money, $2 wide put spread in small caps, or if you're gonna go to all that trouble and buy some protection, are you gonna try to make it, I don't know, maybe a little bit wider to get more than $2, or maybe do you like it getting it off for just 40 cents?
Yes and no. So I guess it just depends on the situation. I've done both in that I have I've bought put spreads if I'm concerned with a pullback, and I've bought puts if I needed total protection. So I mean, I've done both of them. Typically, if I'm going to do it in an individual name, I guess it would. So I like either. I guess it just kind of depends on the situation and what my sentiment is.
What a nice non-answer from the uncleist of Mike, sir. You should get your political career in order, sir. I think it would suit you well. What I meant to say, Senator, but...
Well, when I give answers, I like to have full information and sentiment on a stock. I'm not going to give an answer and just be willy-nilly with it. That's what uninformed people, that's what unsophisticated people do.
Ah, yes, the good fun here. You know, sometimes you just got to roll with the punches there, Mr. Uncle Mike. Small caps, $2 wide put spread, 40 cents, yay or nay. But I digress. Let's keep rolling out here. Listen, let's go out to the Qs. Are the Qs lighting it up out here? The answer is yes, almost 2.75 million. We usually expect around 2.25 million this time of day in the Qs, so about 2.75 million. That's looking pretty frosty out there. The ADBE 4.06, and lest you accuse me of bias, tell you what, listeners, just for fun, I will see what's lighting up the tape in the Qs as well. It is all daily stuff for the most part. Actually, looks like I'd say about about 6 in the top 10. Or top 20, excuse me, that are not expiring today, but it's mostly daily. 14 of the top 20, including the big dog out there today, 196,000 of the 525 calls expiring today. We're at 523 in the Qs right now. And then the 523s are number 2 with 151,000. So right there, listeners, you're talking about 340, almost 350,000 contracts just in those top 2 strikes. So the Qs certainly looking frosty out there today. What about single names? Are single names looking frosty? Are they impressive? The answer is yes, listeners. Single names looking hot out there today. We ran these numbers usually a little earlier than we do in the show, and they're still looking pretty impressive. Rivian is our number 10 today. Cost you 412,000 contracts to break into the top 10. That is not sleepy at all. And our old pal Rivian lighting up the tape today, 14.55, up $1.55, or nearly 12% today. So folks are liking themselves a little bit of Rivian. Looks like they got some analysts giving them some love out there today. Either way, more buyers and sellers. 412,000 contracts on the tape for Rivian, and the number 10 spot, listeners. Again, it's been a while. We saw one recently. Outside of that, it's been really a while since we've seen a healthy north of 400K level to break into the top 10 today. So looking pretty strong in the single names. Number 9 going out to China. You know, if American EVs not floating your boat, let's go to Chinese EVs, in particular NIO, 518 up 57 cents, or about 12.5% out there today. Good for number 9, 470,000 contracts. Some news coming out of China. Obviously, China talking about being more aggressive to support their economy in the coming year. So a lot of Chinese names feeling the upside of that, including NIO, number 9, 470,000 contracts. Number 8, today that ends in Y, so Super Microcomputer Inc. flying high, 46.07 up 214, or $4.87. This thing was just $18 less than a month ago. So quite the rampage this name has been on. You know, once they start throwing that accounting scandal, even the rumors of that are usually enough to tank a stock. But they seem like they have recovered nicely, at least for the time being. Number 8, 493,000 contracts for SMCI. On number 7, it is BABA. Again, another Chinese name that's just benefiting from the China on mentality today. 524,000 contracts on the tape. 93.5 bucks, up 760 or nearly 9% today for BABA. So quite the little pop for them out there. If you haven't watched BABA for a while, their low was 66.63. Looks like that came back in April. And the high was actually heading into October 7th, 117.82. So unlike everything else in the market, they actually got clipped pretty aggressively post-election, got down to about 83 bucks, and now they've since rallied about 10 bucks. Most of that just in the past week out here, and indeed a nice move, 760 just today. So interesting performance out there. Number 7, BABA 524. If you want some A tech names, we got you covered, listeners. Number 6, AMD 541 on the tape. They are coming for AMD today, 131.25, off 7 1/3 or 5.3%. Obviously, we also know the regulators overseas looking askance at NVIDIA, and when they come for the king, sometimes that's going to impact all the other names around it. Number 6, 541 AMD. Number 5, it's the Amazonians popping today, 228.98, up $1.96 or nearly 1% today. Good for number 5, 663 on the tape for them. If that's not enough A tech names, we didn't think so either, listeners. Number 4, it's the Fruit Company, 731 on the tape, 246.5, up 370 or nearly 1.75% today. What's going on with Apple? Hey, more buyers than sellers out there. I think they also said. Then they got listed. Yeah, they got listed one of the best companies in the world to work for, or something like that. Another all-time market cap high for them, almost $750 billion. Remember, we were just celebrating the first $1 trillion company. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, listeners, and now we're hitting nearly $4 trillion out there for the Fruit Company. Number 3, someone was just asking me about this name over the weekend. Is that a sign that maybe they've reached saturation level? I don't know. They're selling off today. It's Palantir, 72.5, off 3 3/4 or nearly 5%. Maybe some folks taking some profits. This name, I wouldn't argue with that. This name's been on the tier this past year. Their 52-week range, 1567 on the dark side, 8091 on the upside. So yeah, they've had quite the run. Number 3, 1.04 million contracts on the tape. I guess people are not used to red out here in Palantir anymore, listeners. Let's just see really quickly. We can see what's like with the tape out here in Palantir. It's the 80 calls, D's 80s, 48,000 of those bad boys. And if past is prologue, people are probably buying them. And also we have the D17 put, again, expiring this week. So these are not even monthly Ds. These are in the weeklies. 70 puts, 32,000 of those. That makes a little bit more sense out here. Let's see. What are these 80s? 80 calls, $2.30. Folks look like they were straight buying them. Oh, they bought them this morning when the stock was 78.38. Oh, ow. Ouch. Oh, $5 against them. The stock has already moved. What a range today. My goodness. 80.91. So that was a 52-week high that it hit this morning. And then immediately just turned right around. Holy crap. They hit 71.05 at one point. Nearly a $10 range on the day. My goodness. Okay, Palantir can't partner with Anduril. You can't have two Tolkien-named companies working together. Hopefully they're paying hefty licensing royalties to the Tolkien estate. Palantir and Anduril. Okay, if you don't know, look it up, listeners. But A, it's cool. B, maybe it's a little too much Tolkien in one mix. Either way, number 3, 1.04 million. Number 2, it's Tesla. Back to the old order, 1.84 million on the tape. 384 1/3, off nearly $5 or 1.25% for a good old Tesla. And the big dog looking a little bit smaller today, as you mentioned. The Chinese looking askance at NVIDIA. You know, when the Chinese start looking at you, usually not good. 2.45 million contracts on the day for NVIDIA. They're selling off 290 right now, off 2%, trading 139.55. So now they are off from their 52-week high of 152.89, but obviously well above the 52-week low of $45.59. So intriguing stuff on the single name front. Let's see, are the numbers intriguing for the month of November? We have them in our hot little hands from our friends over there at OCC. Before I reveal the numbers, Uncle Mike, let's just play a fun guessing game. Do you think the overall monthly volume for November of this year, was it higher or lower than November of last year. So do you think options market grew on the year or it lost some volume in November, sir?
I'll say it grew.
Well, that's good, sir. You have been paying attention because total options volume in the month of November up 21.2%. I would call that a banger. You know, we did have a little thing,
I would too.
A little thing called the election this year that we didn't have last year. So that's probably going to help juice up the numbers a little bit out here. Let's dig a little deeper, listeners. Equity options up a whopping 34.7% last month. So I'd call that a win. ETF options, I remember the month before October, ETF options and index options both down, kind of dragging things down a little bit, but single names carried the day. This past month, ETF options were also up 9.1%. Index options, interestingly enough, for all the talk about 0 day, 0 day, 0 day, and we had an election last month. Index options volume close to flat, off 0.5% from a year earlier. And that is surprising to me. We had an enormous event in November that we did not have a year ago. And yet the overall index options volume pretty much flat to down slightly. That is kind of strange and probably merits a little more analysis out there. I'll have to go look and see if we had the exact number of trading days as well. Sometimes that can game the numbers a little bit year over year. Futures volume, one of the other bright spots, up 4.1%. So folks liking themselves some VIX futures out there. Total net increase of 21.2% year over year. So last year, 903 million contracts. This year, a whopping 1.094 billion with a B contracts, listeners. That is some serious volume. It's getting to the point now where we just expect billion contracts months, which is wild. I mean, just a few years ago, right, leading into the pandemic, the entire industry would put up 3.5, 3.75, maybe 4 billion contracts if we were lucky in a year. Now we're doing 1.09 billion in a month. Wild times, listeners. Speaking of wild times, is it wild times on the earnings front? Well, it kind of depends where you're looking. If you're really into Oracle, then yes, after the bell today for you listeners. If you're really into OLLI's bargain outlet holdings, or maybe a little AutoZone, or a Dave & Buster's, or perhaps a GameStop, then you'll be excited by tomorrow. Wednesday, we have Macy's. Looks like they have an activist investor swirling around them now as well. Vera Bradley and Adobe. Thursday, Broadcom and Costco. So your big box wholesale club's not done yet either. Luckily for you folks, because we like you, we got some hot off the docket earnings move results, and earnings season reports from our friends over there at ORATS. Let's look at Oracle after the bell today. December 9th, 191.69 is where the stock was when we ran this report this morning. They were pricing in $15.89. In the past, they moved $15.28. So a little bit more juice on top, but nothing crazy out there. Let's go out to Ollie's. You into a bargain, listeners? Let's find out. Tomorrow before the bell, 101.5 is where Ollie's was trading. So a pretty pricey discount store. They were pricing in, my goodness, $9.10. In the past, they moved $6.95. That's a lot of juice in Ollie's. That's not a stock I follow, but I might have to start paying attention. We have Dave & Buster's after the bell tomorrow as well. $36.85 is where they were trading. They were pricing in 4.75. This is another one that's juicy. In the past, they moved 3.25. So fully $1.50 more juice. Almost 50% increase from what they've moved in the past. Wow, what is lurking in the land of Dave & Buster's that's generating that much vol? Then we got Adobe, 11th after the bell, listeners. $5.53 is where they were trading. They were pricing in $46.13. In the past, they've moved about 37.25. So, wow, substantially more juice in Adobe as well. Wow, some people have been paying attention, it seems like. And then we've got Costco bringing up the rear here, 12th after the bell. They were trading $992.61, so another lofty stock price out there. The straddle $32.17. In the past, they've moved $30.32, so nearly $2 worth of extra juice in Costco as well. Is that merited? I guess we shall find out. Right now, listeners, the season hanging out at a fairly frothy 121%. That is quite a banger. So if you were thinking we couldn't eclipse our long-term average right now of 114% this cycle, you would be wrong. We're hanging out at 121% right now. So as it has been for the better part of this year, buy and vol has been the order of the day when it comes to earnings. But is buying vol, is that the order of the day in the odd block? I guess let's find out, listeners.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, listeners, let's get weird. Let's get wild. Dare I say it, maybe even a little whimsical. Let's see if we can hit all the W's today. Let's kick things off. We talk about NVIDIA a lot on this show, good old NVDA. Maybe you're tired of NVIDIA. Maybe you want to go in that same neighborhood. Let's just change around a few letters. That's what we got for you today to kick things off. Instead of NVDA, we got good old NVTS, aka Navitas Semiconductor Group. So same neighborhood, semis, just a little bit different ticker and obviously a much lower price, $4.47, even though it is popping hard today, a lot richer today, up 70 cents or 18.5% today. So a banger day for good old Navitas. Has it been a banger year? The answer is actually no. You'd probably just look at this name, Navitas Semiconductor, and think, oh yeah, they probably had a rip-roaring year. But the answer is no. A year ago, they were trading $7.50, and then they crushed it. In fact, less than a month ago, November 15th, they were trading $1.75. So they've had a great month, gone from $1.75 to $4.50. On the year, though, it's been a disaster. They got up to as high as $8.44 right at the tail end of last year, tail end of December. So a year to date, it's been a rough one. They're off 41% since the start of the year, and going back a calendar year, about that same amount, nearly 40% or 41%. So wow. Rough year for Navitas. I guess it just goes to show you can't just have the name Semi in your name somewhere and have a similar ticker to NVIDIA and just print money out here. But I say that, Mr. Uncle Mike. It seems like somebody is getting the bit in their teeth here for Navitas. They're looking at this recent performance, including 70 cents today, and saying, you know what? I gots to get me some of this Navitas upside. In particular, they're going out to March, the March 6s. Now, they had a pretty wide market on these, 75 cents at $1.05. Again, it is Navitas, not NVIDIA, listeners. And they ended up trading 9,078 for 96 cents. It's a funky execution, but then again, given how a lot of these names have played out in the past, we don't usually see a ton of overwriting of these calls. Also, that'd be a pretty impressive bid to find for 96 cents if they were indeed to find it out there. But let's look here really quickly, see if there are any prints around it that could help inform this. Let's see. Well, while I'm looking for those, let's dig in. Yeah, it looks like they bought these. I mean, how often do we see people overwriting semiconductor calls? Not very often. So yeah, let's assume they paid 96 cents for these in this pretty wide market, 9,078 times. The stock was exactly right here, pretty much $4.49, just moving a few cents. Now they do have earnings baked into this expiration cycle, Mr. Uncle Mike. They have earnings on February 27th, so maybe that changes your mind after all. But this is still one of those ones where the stock was not that much more expensive than this just a few weeks ago. The stock was $1.75. Now they're paying nearly $1 for the 6 calls that go away in March, Mr. Uncle Mike. So is that just a bridge too far for you? Or are you one of these people like, I see the momentum, I feel it, I want to buy these calls. So what are you feeling?
That would be a bridge too far for me. And the bridge is covering burning hot lava. And I don't think I would feel comfortable walking on this bridge. So in looking at it, NVTS stocks trading at 446. Now, it is up 18% on the day. So you could make a case that the stock volatility definitely deserves this type of premium on it. But I don't think I would be... This would be in my category of this is a stock for crazy people. And I'd rather look to make money in other ways.
Yeah, that seems a little bit too rich for my blood as well. But you know what? At the end of the day, you folks are the ultimate arbiters of all this fun stuff. So tell you, we'll put it out to a little fun flash poll for you folks to decide whether these calls are crazy cakes or whether you think, that's right on the money for you. A little bit of Goldilocks upside call love. Are you feeling this Navitas? If you are you rather buying the stock for around $4.50? Or would you rather shell out $1 for calls that are $1.50 out of the money and expire in a little over 3 months? I'm curious. What are your thoughts on those? Listen, let's keep it rolling. Let's go out to a ticker we have talked about, but it's been a little while. This is MLCO Resorts and Entertainment Inc. Ticker symbol MLCO, MLCO. They do a lot of gaming and casinos out of Asia, based out of Hong Kong. Trading right now, $7.04, up about 50 cents, or about a little over 7% on the day. And let's see, on the year, kind of been rocking and rolling. A year ago, they were trading $8, so they're still off about $1 or nearly 12% on the year. They went up to $9 in February, down to about $6 in April, back up to $9 again almost in May. Then they got crushed on September 3rd to their low for the year of $4.78. Then they shot right back up October 7th to $8.50, and they're right back down again. The rest of the market's been rallying post-election. They've been selling off to $6 again on November 21st, and now back up $1 over the last few weeks to $7.04. Man, what a wild... Again, this goes back to what I was saying about Asia and China. On again, off again. Looks like it is reflected very starkly in this chart. But it seems like, Mr. Uncle Mike, somebody is playing the on-again game here with this Asian gaming name, and they're not messing around. They're going very straight into the fire. They came in this morning and they said D7s expiring this week on the 13th. How are they? They got 25 cents at 35 cents. They said, done. I will pay 35 cents 7,030 times. The stock was actually a little bit higher, 712 when they bought these. So they are failing the first sniff test. If the Rock Lobster was here, he'd say, well, the stock's down, so I don't like these. Maybe I'm being a bit reductive, but that is the game he likes to play. So they are getting hurt on that. Now, also, this is a weekly call buy, listener, so we all know literally every second counts with these types of trades. And if you get a sell-off in the early blush of this name, it's not going to look good for these calls. No earnings. There's no other obvious catalyst, Uncle Mike, as to why they would be buying these calls that expire this week, with aside of the fact that they just want to roll the dice. Maybe they're really loving what we said, this news coming out of China. Maybe they're feeling it now. Maybe there's some secret event to pop off this week in MLCO that is not listed here. But either way, Mr. Uncle Mike, they are rolling the bones on some in-the-money calls, the D7s for 35 cents, expiring this week. What do you say, sir? I think that's...
Yeah, it's not something that I'd be a fan of doing if you're going to buy premium that close to expiration, unless you really feel that there's something that's going to happen in it that's going to be really good this week. And I'm not one to go to casinos, so I don't know if the second week of December is really a big week for casinos by any means. So I just think this is a case of this is a have a hunch, bet a bunch type of trade.
Does feel very hunchy, or perhaps somehow informed. It is a weird to load up this much for a 1 week call, listeners, in a name that's kind of been topsy-turvy. So maybe one to keep an eye on. I'm not saying run out and buy these, because oftentimes these trades don't work out, but simply a name you might want to keep an eye on this week, see if something is going to pop off. And maybe if they do start running, maybe you can do a little nibbling if you get some momentum behind you. Speaking of momentum, Mr. Uncle Mike, you may recall a few months ago, also speaking of hot Chinese names, this name was all the rage a few months ago on the show, listeners. Remember back to the days of, let's say, late September, early October on the show. Everyone was all up in arms about Up Fintech Holding Limited. See what I did there? Listeners, ticker symbol TIGR, and probably remember it now, listeners, TIGR. Trading $8 today, so up another $1.87 or 30% just today. This name was on the rampage when we were talking about it a few months ago, listeners. It kind of sat around $4, drifted down to $3.50 all year long, and then it started going wild in late September. It went up from about $4.50 September 27th. October 4th, it hit $12.39. Intraday got as high as $14.46. I believe at the time we were talking about, 25 strike calls, wild stuff. And then the stock fell right back down to earth by October 24th. It was still trading above where it was, but way off those highs, got down to $6.14. Kind of been vacillating in that range pretty much ever since. until today. Like I said, that news out of China over the weekend, giving a little bit of a boost to a lot of Asian names. As you'll recall, listeners, on October 7th, we talked about the OC25s on the show. Someone bought 2,100 of them for 35 cents when the stock was $12.73. So they pretty much bought the top almost in the stock. And at the time we said, those are pretty much a bridge too far. The stock closed at $7.22. Those calls were still open. You obviously never had a chance to close those. So they dropped around 73 grand on that trade. What we have today is not quite as optimistic, but still pretty wild, listeners. We have the stock today, like we said, hitting exactly $8. And we had someone coming in this morning with the stock a little higher, $8.41. They said, D's 15s. Yes, the 1.5s. How are they? They got a dime at 15. They said, I will pay 15 cents, good sir. 6,337 times. That is a 230 volatility, if you are wondering. There's no earnings this week. There's nothing. And obviously, you're buying a D's call at this point. So it's effectively a 2-week trade that you're paying 15 cents for. Now, this stock has been on the rampage. It's up 366 or 84% over the past year, up 30%, nearly $2 today. In order for these calls to make any sense, listeners, this stock has to double yet again by December expiration. So in a couple of weeks, they did a total of 12,000. They like this so much today, Uncle Mike. So they bought a total of 12,000 of these D's 15s. This is one of those, even if you win, you lose kind of trades, Uncle Mike, because if the stock does get to 16, you're going to be mad you didn't buy a meteor call that makes you more money on these. So I don't know how much winning there is to be done in these, but Uncle Mike, are you a fan of the D's 15s for a whopping 15 cents today, sir, in TIGR?
I mean, I'd have to see what the quotes were earlier today, but I'm looking right now. You can get the D's 14s for 15 cents too.
Bam, bargain. See, there you go.
So I guess, I'm not sure. This might be one of those trades. I think we've talked about it with meme stocks in the past where they buy further out of the money options because they don't understand that you're better off. I mean, I don't know what the volumes were and the bids and offers were at the time of this trade, but right now, it's obvious if you can get the 14s for the same price, you're obviously better off buying the 14s. That's a no-brainer. But that even my compliance would be okay with me saying that. So I'm not sure when someone does something like that far out of the money, this doesn't even seem like I have a hunch bet a bunch type of trade. This just seems like something to where if you're trying to play the gamma in this, I'm just looking at it right now, even if it goes up maybe another $3 or $4 in the next week, you're going to need that to hit a double on it if you're trying to play gamma. And even then, I'm not sure it would still work. So I think this is just someone that doesn't know what they're doing. That's all I can think of.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say you can probably, by the end of this week, you'll be able to buy the 10s for the same price, if not even a better strike out here. So yeah, this one's kind of rich. Speaking of optimistic, we also back on that October 7th show, listeners talked about the April 10. So somebody did buy a strike that gave them more time. They bought those about 3,000 times. They paid a whopping $6 for those bad boys out there, listeners, when the stock was $12.09. And interestingly enough, those bad boys are still open, but they paid a lot. They paid $6 for those. That was a 163 vol. So they're still open, but obviously the stock has taken a drubbing. Those calls have taken a drubbing. They're now trading $1.50. So they're really wearing it on those calls. Again, that's when we say when you just pay whatever price for calls, oftentimes it is challenging to make those pay up. And right now, at least, they're still open, but not looking great. But you know what's always looking great, listeners? It's the strategy block. So let's get to it.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, Uncle Mike, what you got for us this week, sir?
I want to talk about an asset class. An asset class outside of our circles is seldom talked about. That asset class is volatility. Is volatility an asset class? Yes, no, maybe. I believe that it is. And the way with which I like to use it is twofold. So first off, what are the four major asset classes from a traditional setting are stocks, bonds, commodities, and real estate. Arguably anything that you have and that you can own, you could put into one of those four categories. Now, what I would say is that all four of those things have volatility. And so I believe volatility can be used as an asset class. Now, the two ways with which I use it, and every client is different. No one has the same need for volatility in two separate ways. But the first one is through premium selling. Let's say that market participants believe that volatility is going to be greater than what it actually turns out to be. Well, then a covered call would be a great tool for that, in that volatility is priced very high. If you sell it, you're essentially going short volatility, and time is on your side, and you can take advantage of that. And that's one way with which to use volatility as an asset class. Now, how much should you have in volatility? How much should you not? Like I said, that's for each individual client to determine based on their financial goals and objectives. But I think it's important to have something like that because of the fact that should the market go down and you need to take money from a stock portfolio, well, you're having that call premium in your favor to where you're not going to lose as much, but you still had some bullish exposure. Or let's say we do have a sideways market. Same concept. You'll be able to have some premium in your pocket, even though the market didn't do anything. I think that's a very wise thing to have in your portfolio. Now, the next way with which I like to use volatility would be to do hedged equity. Now, whether it's something to where we're hedging a portfolio, hedging an individual equity, whatever the case may be, I think it's important to have some type of exposure like that in your account, because let's say that volatility, the market is more volatile than the market indicates, meaning the stocks are going to go way down, let's say. Well, you have that hedged equity to where you're having upside exposure, but you have a put option in place in case it goes down. Now, let's say it's still very volatile, but the market goes higher. You can take advantage of that and sleep at night because you will have hedged equity. You'll have a put option protecting your equity. So those are the ways with which I like to use volatility in and of itself as an asset class. I think it's very important for client portfolios to have that type of exposure. And how much of it, like I said, that's up to the individual person. But volatility is an asset class, in my humble opinion. And that is the strategy block for today.
All right, listeners, now let's keep on rolling and go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, time to go around the block. Let's first check in. Uncle Mike was just talking about vol. And we asked you last week, at this time about a week ago, South Korea surprised everyone declaring martial law. Of course, we saw some interesting geopolitical events over the weekend, issues with France. So a lot going on the geopolitical front right now. So we asked you, is this a tempest in the teapot or a symptom of more surprise volatility to come this year? Quite simply, this time a week ago, VIX was hanging out at 13.5. You think VIX will close higher or lower at the end of the year? And 51.2% of you are expecting a little bit more vol to sneak in above 13.5, 41.5% saying it's going to be below 13.5, 4.9% say, who cares, I'm in crypto, and 2.4% say, who cares, I am in cash. We also asked you a fun little flash poll right now, given what we were just talking about with Uncle Mike earlier, those NVTS March 6 calls for 96 cents. Are you a buyer or a seller at that price? 80% of you right now say you want to buy it. Only 20% say you are sellers. And then our actual question of the week right now, listeners, getting into Uncle Mike's favorite asset class. We say, hey, crypto assets have exploded in value this year. Many people are excited about the potential for crypto under the new administration. Quite simply, which crypto asset do you feel has the most potential upside in 2025? We gave you top three and then another. Bitcoin, ETH, or Solana. I won't make Uncle Mike answer because Bitcoin is his favorite asset class of all time. But Bitcoin taking it right now with exactly 2/3 of you, 66.7%, 16.7% each for ETH and Solana. Again, that just went live a few minutes ago. We'll keep an eye on that throughout the week, talk about it more in a little bit on the Crypto Rundown with our guest, Mr. Greg Magadini, coming up after this program. But before we get there, Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what are you keeping an eye on for the rest of the week until the Thursday show?
Who cares? I'm in crypto. As much as that just felt kind of weird to say.
I knew you were going to choose that one. You're the guy voting for that, sir.
That's me. I'm stuffing the ballot box with that. So, no, just continuing to watch this rally in metals, seeing if it's going to take us anywhere or seeing if it's going to have a little bit more legs. So watching that for the next few days. Also watching the VIX. We're in the 13s. And we were in the 12s on Friday, so seeing if this is just a weekend effect type of things or seeing where that's going to go to see where premium's going to get priced out, because we got some more covered calls coming up for the triple income coming up in a week, so continuing to watch that pretty carefully. And then, of course, watching the S&P, seeing if we can still hold the 6,000 for the end of the year or possibly go higher.
And that music means we can't go any higher, at least on this program, but don't worry, we'll be back in a little bit, listeners, to talk all things crypto derivatives. Been a wild ride of late. More wildness to come, so stay tuned for that. But before we go, Mr. Uncle Mike, if folks want more Uncle Mike goodness in their lives, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike Tosaw, Tosaw. No webinar today after the show, but there will be one next week after the show. So follow me on Twitter to get more information on that. You can also visit my website, stcharleswealth.com, if you are looking for a financial advisor who will delve in the option product.
Check them out, stcharleswealth.com. And you know where to go to check out our friends on this program, public.com/optionblock. The place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. If you ever said to yourself, I wish I could get paid to trade these crazy option things, well, maybe Public is your huckleberry. Public.com/optionblock. At the very least, you head over there, you send some love to the show. So they keep sending love the show's way. The show keeps coming to you like it has for quite some time now here, listeners, here. Public.com/optionblock. That's going to do it for us on the old OB. Back again in a little bit for the Crypto Rundown, then back again with our usual array of content until we're back again on Thursday, Flowmaster in hand, for another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
If you trade options, you want to be smart about every decision. So why not choose the smartest platform for your trades? At public.com, you can view upcoming earnings dates directly in the options chain. You can queue and execute multiple orders simultaneously. Easily view contract performance over time. And if you have a question about any stock, you can ask Alpha, their AI for investors. But want to know the smartest part of trading options on Public? Earning rebates on every single contract traded. No other platform provides options trading rebates, and they reduce your trading costs to less than $0 per trade. So, make the smart move and switch. The only options trading platform where you can earn rebates on every single contract traded. To learn more, please visit public.com/optionblock. Paid for by Public Investing. Options not suitable for all investors and carry significant risk. Full disclosures in podcast description. U.S. members only. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.